Welcome back. On October 10th, Global Mental Health Day was recognized worldwide to increase awareness of the difficulties associated with mental health. I am joined by Dominique Robinson, a licensed clinical social worker based in New York City, who will discuss the mental health therapy she offers and the safe space she created to promote self care and mental health without shame. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now, can you give us some background on your experience as a licensed clinical social worker and therapist in New York City?
Absolutely. So I actually got like a big start here at Lehman College. I graduated from
Wow,
Lehman
cool.
with my bachelor's in social work degree. And then I moved on to Silverman School of Social Work at Hunter College, where I got my master's in social work. I started with field studies in the education world, where I served children with disabilities and children who had special needs and mental health needs. After that, I moved on to community-based organizations like domestic violence shelters, where I primarily worked with women of color and their children to find safety, stability, a sense of self-worth, also find joy and happiness again. Then after that, I started diving into the mental health world, where I worked in a community-based organization serving clients of the Bronx who were seeking mental health treatment. That's where I polished a lot of my skills and actually developed my own clinical practice, where I now serve as a therapist providing clinical therapy to residents of the New York State.
Now, I want to talk about some of the people that you worked with. You kind of gave us a little bit of a rundown, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Like you worked with so many different communities. I understand a huge part of your work. You talked about women of color, but I want to focus it more on like Black mental health, especially for women. What was the significance of kind of like delving into that? And if it is more women of color, that's also amazing. So can you just talk about that experience and what inspired you to kind of focus on that?
Yeah. Well, as a woman of color, in my own experience, when I was looking for mental health services, I found out it was hard to find those services. They existed, but they're not necessarily, if you're living in like a Bronx community, they're not necessarily marketed in your community. So if you knew where to look, you kind of knew how to like retrieve those services. But if you didn't know and you never been exposed, it was hard for you to find it. So I found that I can also provide services in this space. And then the women that I was working with and the families I was working with were also complaining of the same thing. They would go to help and go look for help, but when they would receive the help, they felt that people didn't understand them or the services wasn't quite for them.
I can understand. And there's like sometimes a disconnect, which is like really important to kind of like notice. And I want to talk about, would you say this is part of a reason why there is a need to kind of focus on that? Because I know sometimes people think, mental health is for everybody and like everyone needs help. But why made you say like, no, we should kind of look into these communities and see how they differ?
Yeah, I definitely think mental health is for everyone. Everybody has mental health, so mental health care is definitely for everyone. But I think focusing on people of color allows us to really serve the need that they have. When we talk about like racial disparities, even health disparities, if we look at the Bronx and the Bronx's health disparities, people of color, people in poverty, people need assistance and they need assistance that's in a way that works for them.
Now, last week was World Mental Health Day. What is the significance of acknowledging this on a global scale?
Yeah. So last week was World Mental Health Day, and the theme for this year was every human being deserves mental health. Mental health is a human right. It's a universal human right. I think that on a global scale, it allows us to have these conversations. So what I'll see on TV, what I'll see on social media is these conversations happening. And for some people, this is the first time they're actually hearing a lot about this. This is the first time they may be sharing a post about mental health. So it really opens the conversation and it provides access to the conversation to people who we might not normally be able to target.
Right. And I also want to add that I think that we're so like lucky to be in a time where it's okay to talk about these things because I
Yeah.
know for a very long time, it wasn't. So, can you just talk about the importance of that? And then also what does supporting mental health and being open about this look like?
Yeah. When we talk about mental health, we decrease the stigma. If I'm able to share that I had a therapist or I have a therapist, I make it easier for somebody who looks like me or somebody who's from where I'm from to feel like, okay, maybe I can try it. They might have questions that they're feeling okay and comfortable to ask because the conversation is open.
Now, I really want to talk about the self-care mentor.
Mhm.
That's like basically your project that you kind of like built. So can you talk a little bit more about that and basically how it started?
Yeah. So maybe about 6 years ago, I think it was 2017, I found myself wanting to really work on my wellness. And I wasn't quite ready to explore therapy yet, but I wanted to do things to help myself. So I started looking into mental health. I started researching self-care. And as I began to learn and I was like healing in some ways, I began to blog about it. So I would share like just things that I learned, share things that I was doing. And even when I entered therapy, I was just sharing. So many people started to come to me online about, what is this? How can you recommend? Can we do it together? And so I literally became a mentor. And that's when I developed the brand, the Self-Care Mentor. So it's really for people who want to begin wellness and they want to begin to heal, but maybe they can't afford therapy yet, but they want to do something on a smaller scale. Or maybe they don't quite believe in it yet. Maybe therapy seems scary, so they want to do activities that they can access from home or from their community.
Now, how does your organization promote wellness and self-care?
Yeah. So we do a lot of workshops. That's mainly what we do. And besides workshops, we do a lot of promotion on social media. I also create merchandise that people can buy that help spread the word. It decreases stigma and things that they can use in their home. Also like feel good things too, things that they're proud to have. They actually like love to share and promote themselves. But we do a lot of workshops. That's mainly the way that we spread the information.
And can you talk about some of those workshops and like what people can expect when they interact?
Absolutely. So some of the workshops that I do range from literally learning about self-care. So like one of my favorites is like Self-Care 101, and it's talking about like the definition of self-care. What is self-care? Besides that, there's workshops I do where we actually practice self-care. So we might have journaling workshops, vision board workshops. I've had workshops with children, workshops with couples on self-care and how couples could practice self-care together.
Now, I'm so glad that you brought up children because we recently had a segment where we discussed the possibility of basically children having mental health days
Yeah.
because we talk about mental health for adults, but sometimes I guess it just naturally happens. Sometimes you forget that children are also dealing with, mental health issues. So
Yeah.
can you talk about that? And then, how could this benefit also like children of color?
Yeah. So I also work as a school social worker. As a school social worker, I'm around nothing but children all day. And children's mental health is a thing. It actually exists. And sometimes we think children are in the background. They might not be feeling what we're feeling or experiencing what we're experiencing, but they are. Oftentimes on a bigger scale because they don't have much control of a lot of their situations. So children's mental health is really important. Also, the adults at this time that might be struggling with their mental health, maybe they struggled as a child with their mental health as well. So it's good and it's important to teach children about their mental health and help them prioritize and help them do things that can help them cope in the future.
Now, because kids are like kind of included in
Hmm.
this world, which I think is amazing. I think it
Yeah,
is good to like include children.
absolutely.
How like strong that is to have these community-based events. Like, how does that strengthen the
Yeah.
community?
So community-based events are really important because the community is where the people are. The community is where my people are. So in order for me to be able to like access the people, I have to be able to go into the community and service them where they are. And then it also services children as well.
Now, I also want to talk about something a little bit fun because what I like that you do is that you kind of bring
Mhm.
some like life into it. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
feel like super reflective all the time. I
Mhm.
understand that you have like charms for Crocs,
Yeah.
which is like kind of fun. Can you talk about like how you actually like kind of got that part kind of like into your work?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do is creating conversation. And in order to create conversation, we have to like decrease the stigma and just normalize it. So Crocs was a big thing and still a big
Yeah.
thing where people are wearing Crocs and they're collecting Croc charms. So I had looked for Croc charms that reflected like mental health and promoted mental health, but didn't find any. So I actually created Croc charms and sold Croc charms based off Black mental health, self-care. So people would purchase several of them for themselves, for their friends and family, even for like their coworkers or staff, and they would provide it to them and they would wear it on their Crocs. So they were rocking mental health, not just like on a t-shirt, which I also provide, but on their Crocs.
And why was it important to you to kind of like bring that like kind of I don't want to say youthful energy, but
Hmm.
like something that's fun that makes
Yeah.
people smile? Like, why was that important to like kind of have that be included in your work?
Right. So when I looked for Croc charms, I saw that there was Croc charms for like nurses and doctors and all these other spaces. You can rep where you were from. You can buy your flag. But why not rep that you prioritize mental health or that mental health matters to you? Our young people are wearing Crocs. Our older people are wearing Crocs. It's a thing. It's cool. So let's bring mental health into that same space and make it a conversation starter.
Now, what are some tips on searching for and finding the right health professional to assist, someone on their mental health journey?
Yeah, it It really depends on the person that you're trying to talk to. Sometimes we're not the right person to approach someone, and maybe we need to reflect on that and find that person. It might be another family member or another friend. If it is you, you want to approach the person, but of course with like love and compassion. You also want to be patient, knowing that nothing is going to change overnight. And sometimes the first time you approach somebody about something, they might not take heed, or maybe they did, but they might not have made a change. But if you be patient, you might see some change. You also want to remember that your story is not theirs and that everybody has their own story. So I would just approach them with confidence, at the same time, patience, and at the same time, maybe some resources. So if they are ready to change, there's something that you can provide them, like a website, a link, or something similar.
And then what can people do if they, like you mentioned, they want to find somebody who kind of shares the same community with them
Right.
while they kind of go on their mental health journey?
Yeah. So if you want to find somebody that shares a similar community to you, I think right now social media is a lot of the space where people look for things. So besides like doing a Google search, which is definitely important, and you can do that as well, you can also look on social media. There are a lot of therapists who are targeting the communities that use social media, especially our young people. You can also ask a friend. Therapists love referrals and they love when their name is shared. So your friend might have a great therapist, or your friend's friend might have a great therapist. Ask around. Your job, if you have health insurance, might be able to provide you with a listing. Your health insurance might be able to provide you with a listing of therapists that take your insurance. A lot of times now on therapy listings, you can have like a filter where you say, I want somebody in this area, of this community, of this religion, or whatever.
Well, Dominic, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this really
Absolutely.
important conversation. And I really loved, just the ways that you kind of make it like feel like a little bit new and like you said, just normalize. Like it's just a
Absolutely.
normal situation. So I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
To learn more about Dominique and the work she does, please go to her website at www.theselfcarementor.com. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.